Good Wednesday evening to you. It's 21 News Chief Meteorologist Eric Wilhelm here. We call it Weather for Weather Geeks, but hopefully you are even enjoying these videos if you're not a self-proclaimed weather geek. We do these each and every weekday evening, except for Fridays during high school football season. But otherwise, we do these each and every weekday evening, and they're usually online by about 7:30 or so in the evenings. When we have severe weather, active weather that requires a live stream and the schedule gets thrown off, then maybe we don't do Weather Geeks on some of those evenings. But on just regular Joe evenings like this one, this is just about when you can expect this to be uploaded to my social media, including my YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you follow me there and subscribe to these videos to make sure that you always see the latest stuff. And we're going to talk about what happened today with the forecast, because it went down the tubes thanks to the clouds and, most importantly, the fog sticking around longer than we thought. We had a stout temperature inversion overhead last night. Now, normally, especially during the daylight hours, air gets colder as you go up in altitude, of course. But sometimes temperature inversions set up, especially at night, and that means that the air actually warms some as you go up a couple of thousand feet, and that kind of acts like a lid, a cap on the atmosphere. It traps things underneath that lid, and that includes low-level moisture, and that means sometimes fog. And we're into that foggy time of the year, really from late August through about this time of the year is our fog season, with these longer nights and more plentiful moisture than we have later in the winter when things are usually pretty bone dry. All right, so it took forever for the clouds to filter out this afternoon. The visibility was low all the way through lunchtime in some parts of the area. Pretty long-lasting fog, but the sky did clear, and the question for the rest of tonight is, will the fog return? We'll talk about that momentarily. Now, we had a high of 65 in our forecast for today. 56 was the high today. Never like seeing a 9-degree temperature bust on day one. It's going to happen a handful of times a year. That's just the nature of the business. But never makes yours truly very happy. But that being said, 56 is still above the average by a degree, and it's going to be a lot warmer starting tomorrow. Zooming out, taking a look at the nation as a whole this evening, not a lot going on east of the Rockies. Most of the action is out west, where a big deep trough is plowing into the west coast and down through the Intermountain West, and winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings are up for mainly the mountainous areas, even down into Southern California, outside of LA, up towards Big Bear. It is going to be snowing, and it's going to be cold by their standards, for sure. Kind of an early season event for the West Coast. All right, so the fog question tonight. We still have an inversion overhead. We still have a little low-level moisture, and so there's probably going to try to be some fog by tomorrow morning, but is it as widespread and as thick and as long-lasting as it was this morning? No, I really doubt that. But locally, the fog could turn pretty dense. I just don't think it's going to be a everybody sees fog kind of a situation, and the fog should burn off much more quickly than today, leaving us with lots and lots of sunshine for the afternoon on our Thursday. What a great afternoon. And speaking of great weather, despite some high cirrus clouds filtering in on Friday, this is going to be a very nice day. The breeze will be noticeable as we kick off the weekend. What else is noticeable? Shorts weather in the afternoon. The record high of 77 is probably out of reach on Saturday, but we have 74 now, or 75 actually, in our forecast. With a mix of sun and clouds. The clouds really won't lower and thicken until a couple of hours after sunset, leaving us with a pretty good chance of seeing a few showers overnight as this weak front slides through. There's really no cold air with this front. Temperatures will still be way, way above the average at the end of the weekend and the start of next week, including on Election Day, and we've got plenty of sunshine, it looks like, coming our way as high pressure stays firmly in command of the weather during the first half of next week. But you start to see the signs of the pattern change at the end of this 10-day outlook. So there you go, right there. By next Saturday, 10 days from now, I think it's going to start turning a lot colder, and we will be in a distinctly different pattern for a time. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's a few weeks, maybe it continues into December. The jury's still out on that, but one thing for sure, the pattern is going to change pretty rapidly as we go towards mid-month. All right, speaking of mid-month, we are now just a little more than 10 days away, about, 15 days away from, or 2 weeks away, and one day, it's 15 days, from our annual winter forecast on the 17th day of November, debuting on 21 News at 5 and 6. That'll be the short version. If you just want to get to the point, and you don't really care about the why and a lot of the meteorology and all that stuff, you can watch that version. It'll be a few minutes long. That'll be posted online pretty quickly early in the evening. Then after the 6 p.m. newscast, probably about 7:30 or 8, we'll get the long, detailed, really nerdy version online. So that's coming up on Thursday, the 17th, weather permitting. If we have a freak snowstorm or something that evening, that'll change the plans. But assuming the weather is cooperative, that's when we will do the annual winter forecast. The big player, of course, in our annual winter forecast for the third straight year is La Nina. That's this stripe of cooler than average water, I should say, stretching from north and east of Australia all the way across to the coast of South America. Now, we can show you maps that show what a typical La Nina looks like, but La Ninas, there's a lot of different flavors. And this year's flavor is one where the coldest water, at least early in the season, the coldest water is centered very far to the east, banked up against the coast of South America. Sometimes La Ninas have the coldest water compared to average out here, even sometimes way out here. But this year it looks like, at least as winter settles in, this will be an east-based La Nina. That can be important because there is a difference between an east-based La Nina and one that's more based in the central part of the basin. Here's a look at a composite of relatively recent years, going back to the mid-'80s, of east-based La Ninas and the temperature departures when you throw them all in the hopper and get an average. So there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in this mix. You have a mild signal, no surprise, in the southeast. You have a cold signal across the northern tier states, and we tend to be kind of in a battle zone. Some years it can be kind of cold, some years not so much. But again, this is an average of these 5 years. That's an east-based La Nina. Let's talk about a central-based La Nina. It's a whole different thing. Look at the difference. East-based, central-based. With a central-based La Nina, and this happens more frequently. You can see there's a lot more years in our composite here from 1988 through a couple of winters ago in 2020, 2021. The cold tends to be based more in the Pacific Northwest. The ridge is more pronounced off the southeastern U.S., and we tend to be warmer than the average. There are some exceptions, but again, when you throw all these years in and get an average, it tends to be a warmer winter in a La Nina that's more based in the central part of the basin. This year, it's more of an east-based La Nina. Does that mean this winter is going to be freezing cold and harsh and terrible? No, not necessarily, but stay tuned for our forecast coming up in a couple of weeks. But I've been showing on Weather for Weather Geeks for a couple of weeks now. Some drips and drabs of what I'm looking at as I assemble the forecast. There's hours and hours of research that goes into this thing. I'm spending a lot of time on it this year because this is a difficult forecast this year. We're in year 3 of a La Nina. That happens very rarely. So we don't have a big sample size of year 3 La Ninas to pull from. We got a lot of La Ninas to look at, but year 3 with some of the other ingredients in the oceans and the atmosphere, we don't have a lot of parallels in the past to rely on. So we're going to be, kind of crossing our fingers and doing the best we can based on some of the analogs we can look at and then some of the computer model data as well. So again, coming up, November the 17th. It's a Thursday. I'll see you then. I'll see you back here on Thursday for a fresh edition of Weather for Weather Geeks.